as we talked about, bringing in a public adjuster is just bringing in somebody to basically level the playing field with the insurance company, to be able to talk about coverages when they try and steer a claim towards some type of a denial or, you know, an incorrect storm date, pre-existing condition, faulty installation, and basically back you guys into a corner that you're not able to overcome because you can't argue what the insurance policy reads. You guys know enough about identifying damages, but public adjusters are basically, you know, have expertise in identifying different kinds of damages and whether or not that kind of damage warrants enough to be included in a claim. Eliminating the burden of the claims process. A lot of times, public adjusters, when we get involved, it's not only meeting with the adjuster and putting together a claim. A lot of you are busy doing other stuff, and you may be tired of having multiple trips to a property, meeting adjusters, and getting the runaround and spending half your day on the phone trying to track down an adjuster that's not getting back to you. You know, when you bring in a public adjuster, basically they take over that entire administrative burden for you guys. You report the loss, they get an adjuster assigned, they set up the appointment, you go to the meeting, they do the entire claim presentation, the estimate, photograph the damages. Basically, you guys can just take a seat and let a public adjuster do what they do. Just check the paper, see if I forgot anything. 10 hits per square. How many times have you heard an adjuster say, I need 10 hits per square? You get this roof bought. Okay. A lot. There's nothing in an insurance policy that says that you need 10 hits per square to get a roof replaced first. So I want to make that clear. If somebody comes out and says, let's mark a couple 10 by 10 areas, get me 10 hits, and I'm going to buy the roof. That whole entire thing is, I think, is a Hague certified kind of thing that adjusters take on individually as themselves to think that's the criteria that you need to get a roof replaced. I said yesterday in the other thing, well, what if the one hit put a hole through the decking? That doesn't count, right? So I just want you to be able to understand the things that they come out and do, and not every insurance company is terrible, not every adjuster is terrible. If you get a guy that comes out that puts the entire burden on you guys, that you have to find 10 hits per square, or else it's not going to be a paid claim, is not correct.
Isn't the argument on that it would be more cost effective for the insurance company to do a repair than a replacement?
Say that again?
Isn't it more the argument on the insurance company that they'd be offering more of a repair instead of versus a replacement on the roof, based on the amount of hits on the roof?
Oh, I think if it may not always be less expensive to make all those repairs than it is for you guys to rip a roof off and put a new one, but if you have 1 or 2 hits on an entire slope, I don't think that's a great claim to get involved in to begin with. But and I didn't get into the miracle claim thing that I get called out all the time. But if it's widespread but it's sporadic and it pretty much hits both slopes, I think that you're not going to be able to have repairs all over the place and be left with a checkerboard roof when you're done. I mean, there may not be a matching statute in Colorado, I'm not exactly sure, but the way a policy reads is you're supposed to be put back to pre-loss condition with like, kind, and quality. You know, in the state of Florida, if you have 1 or 2 tiles missing but they're obsolete, they owe you for a whole new roof. But in other states, if they can find something that's similar, that's adequate. So you need to look into the different kind of statutes in the state of Colorado, whether they actually owe to match or not to match. Because if they owe to match, you know, even if it's 1 square and you can't get something that's going to match what's there, which you 99 out of 100 times you'll never be able to do it, you're on that whole slope. Any other questions?
Yeah, about overhead and profit, like you said, it's just multiple trades and they just say, no, it's not complex. If you may have 4 trades on a job and you're trying to ask for it, is there some sort of catchphrase, or I mean, what would you guys do if that were the situation? If they just turn us down, like we're not going to fight this stuff?
My argument is, I'll just go back to the adjuster. You have multiple trades. You have 4 trades here. You have, for example, roofing, windows. You may have some interior drywall and some painting. I said, somebody's going to have to hire, a general contractor is going to have to hire all these different subs and manage this entire project. Where is the allowance for all of that type of additional work that they have to put in liability? So, and then they always come back with, well, you know, it's 85% roofing, it's not complex, it's only 1 or 2 windows. And I'm not sure, but I think the state of Colorado may have something from the Department of Insurance where there's some type of a statute on 3 or more trades you have to include overhead and profit. So I apologize for not knowing the laws because I'm in so many different states, but you should definitely check with the state because I think there's many lawsuits and appraisals and big heavyweight battles over the insurance companies not including overhead and profit. And it's weird because you could be doing a house across the street and there's 2 trades and they give it to you, and then across the street you have 6 trades and they don't. And it's never really consistent, really, no matter where you go. It just depends on the adjuster, it depends on the carrier.
You know, back to the overhead and profit, you know, a lot of times we run into a situation where they include overhead and profit on all the items except for the roof. Is that pretty standard?
They try to do that, yes. I have a huge claim in Chicago right now where it was exactly that type of situation. And there was about 8 trades. I mean, there was a bunch of HVAC units, plumbing, electrical, ceiling tiles, painting, drywall, debris removal, metal, and they try to say, we gave you overhead and profit just on those and not on the roof. And the whole argument, believe it or not, was I went to the appointment with the roofer. And he goes, well, I met the roofer, and I think he's just a roofer. I said, it doesn't matter if he's just a roofer. He doesn't have a contract for this job right now. I said, hypothetically, it doesn't matter. All that matters is that there's 8 to 10 trades. There needs to be a general contractor involved to manage all these sub-trades and you overhead and profit. To make a long story short, he called up the construction consultant that was originally on the case and said, well, we're going to add in 5% only. Like, really? I said, so you're getting the opinion of a guy that knows he has no chance of getting the job, that says if it was his job, he would charge 5%. So that one's kind of in a heavyweight battle right now.
Okay.
Excuse me, are you talking about American Family? Because we have a current lawsuit with Keith Frankel, lawyer. If the American Family did that to you, contact Keith Frankel. We need 8 more people for a class action lawsuit. Contact Keith Frankel's a lawyer.
Right,
Ask
what's
the
his name?
American Family. They already have 2 customers. They paid overhead profit on everything but the roof. I have him already. I have an adjuster 3 times on a recording explain that they've been told to do that. They've been told to lie. And so that's why Keith Frankel's taking the case, but we need 8 more people. If you have that, it has to be American Family does.
that Heath Franklin or Keith Franklin?
Keith Frankel.
Franklin.
Yeah.
The fact that
It has
they,
to be American tax.
the fact that they already committed to overhead and profit on the other items is really digging themselves into a hole. They either should have done nothing or did it all. You can't pick and choose what you want to do, because if it's a huge swing of money, all of a sudden they don't feel like putting overhead and profit on the road. And that's when you guys potentially get yourselves in trouble, you know, trying to cross the line over how much can I say back to this adjuster. And I can always go back as a licensed adjuster and say, you show me in the policy where it says I need more than 3 trades for you to pay me overhead and profit. Well, they can't do it. They can't show it. And that's where every situation is different. And that could be the situation where you know that I'm not going to get to where I need to get without bringing in somebody to take this past the person that I'm dealing with.
No, that brings up the question too. On average, what does a public adjuster charge? 10%, 20%?
10%.
It's typically 10%. It's on the net claim after deductible. If there's depreciation, public adjuster shouldn't charge on money that's never been recovered. So if it's a $100,000 claim, and take 20% depreciation, they pay 80, and then it's a $5,000 deductible. The fee should only be based on the net amount paid to the insured.
First question. In the policy, it doesn't mention 3 trades. Well, does it mention 1 trade? No.
Doesn't mention anything about, this is all kind of just what's evolved over time, and whatever the insurance companies can do, and, you know, they got a job to do. They're trying to run a business. They're trying to minimize their loss. You're trying to maximize your loss. And the way that they've put these things into place, where the minute you guys start to get to really know what you're doing, like you do, when you start asking these questions, then they get a little, they start backpedaling. And it's the same thing about the functional damage. It's the same thing about the overhead and profit. It's the same thing about 10 hits per square. You can't find any of that stuff in a policy. All a policy says is, if you have damage, if you have damage, you have damage. I mean, we haven't talked about metal roofs today, cosmetic damage versus functional. I don't know how many of you in here do metal roof claims all the time, and firstly the adjuster comes out and says, this is cosmetic, we're going to pay for coating. Okay? But coating is not in a policy. Coating is a compromise. Coating is a repair. Coating is not bringing that roof back to pre-loss condition. So when the insurance company brings out Hague or Rimkus or Donan, whoever it may be, all my favorite buddies, and they say, listen, we know the roof got hit by hail, but we don't think it's functional. And that's when, how do you get past that, right? Well, you either hire your own engineer that does their own evaluation, but it may take it all the way to a level of a metallurgist.
Just simply tell them that if I was to sell my house with this damage on here, the customer's going to look at my house and say, I buy your house, but I don't like the roof. So therefore, indemnification means to return you back to your original financial position. If it's not the original financial condition, if he can't sell that house because of that damage, whether it's cosmetic or not, it has to be replaced. That's all.
You're correct, and I get into a lot of arguments about what happens when this client sells this industrial building, and the new buyer comes in and sees all the hail strikes on the roof and says, hey.
Can you repeat your question so everyone can hear it? So that everyone can hear your response.
His question was, if the insurance company doesn't indemnify the insurer, which means bringing them back to pre-loss condition, it could ultimately affect the resale value of their property. He was 100% correct. But a lot of times the insurance company doesn't really care about that. They care about, you know, what's damaged and what's not damaged. A lot of my arguments are exactly about that type of situation, about what's going to happen when the insured tries to sell this commercial building and there's hail strikes all over. The new buyer is going to come in with a, you know, maybe with their own own roofer or their own inspector and say, hey, it's gonna be $800,000 to put a new roof on. Next thing you know, guy goes back to the seller, you need to take 800 grand off your selling price because I gotta put a whole new roof on this, and that is a major problem.
Well, my question to you is a lot of times, they don't want to pay for flashing, except flashing. How do you respond to that?
IRC code 2009 says they cannot put on used material back on the roof. That's used and it is damaged once you take the nails out.
Right. That's the argument I
That's
use.
the argument you gotta use.
Yeah.
And as to O&P guys, just get an estimate, just get an invoice from every single one of your subs. Send those in, and 99% of the time before you get the O&P.
I'm gonna go back to that, go back to the flashing question.
Why don't State Farm stop doing that for a while?
The way a policy works is they don't for the rent damage. You first go around with the insurance company, will be for you to get the roof put back the way that it was, okay? Then there needs to be a completely separate supplement for code upgrade. A lot of times, a lot of roofers include all the code right up front in their estimate when they meet with the adjuster. What you really need to do, believe it or not, is actually don't take the code into consideration. You are going to do that, but your claim presentation is what's it going to take to put back what's here. And then, once they commit to that, when you need to pull permits and actually do the work, and you can spell out the chapters and the verses, and you list all the stuff that you need to do to bring it up to code, or else, it's not going to be, you're not going to pass an inspection. That's when you go back with the supplement. You can try and forecast all that stuff, obviously, up front with the adjuster, but it's not going to get paid. A lot of times, it may be residential, they may just pay it up front on you, but on larger commercial stuff, if there's $100,000 of code coverage or $250,000 of code coverage, they're not going to pay for that up front. I'm going to have to actually call the adjuster and say they started doing this roof. He's going to confirm the material's been shipped. He's going to want to see you bring in the roof up to code with 3 inches of insulation or whatever it may be, and then it's going to be a completely new supplement on just the code issues and recoverable depreciation.
The general, on that same thing, it's American Family again, because everybody knows how fun they're to deal with, but we've got a house that's got 3 layers on it, needs to be redecked, and they only want to pay for 1 slope. I mean, what do you think?
Did you find damage on every slope?
There was some, but they're doing the 10 hits thing again, but I just don't understand how you can, deck 1 slope, take off 3 layers, and they call it good. It just doesn't make sense. We have been arguing with it for months.
You can't, but your argument is not straight up. It's a code. You have to deal with it as a code, and they're almost daring you. If you actually replace this entire roof and bring it up to code, show that you did the work and spent the money, we'll reimburse you. So your compensation should be, if I actually do this roof, and I pull permits and I have to, obviously I can't put another roof on 3 layers already. The city's not going to let me put another layer on. I'm going to have to take this roof all the way down to the deck. If I do that, are you going to pay me? And then there's another whole question.
The issue is that there's sloping. There's 3 layers on both sides. They're paying for one, redecking this one, and the ridge cap is not paying for this slope. We can say that.
Again, it's all code. Is the city going to let you tie one into the other?
One state trying to pay for one set of the decking to be replaced. Code enforcement then kicks in, and they have to replace the other decking. Therefore, the other roof piece has to come off, and therefore they have to replace the other decking. So
Oh, I would believe, I get that. They just,
you can win that argument.
but they told me it's not up to me, or it's not up to them to determine how we did the work. They just said, figure it out. I was like, oh, give me a break.
So they let you pull the permit? They allowed you to pull the permit on that work?
I haven't pulled it yet, because I haven't come to an agreement with the insurance company.
Yeah, they're trying to pull the permit on the work. If they deny, they're not, they have to go into they approve it.
A lot of times guys pull permits to get just a rejected permit, go back to the carrier, say, I got a rejected permit, this is what they're going to order me to do to bring it up to code. Obviously, if you get a half-inch deck and the code is 5/8, whatever it may be, they're not going to let you tie one into the other, but it's not ever easy. The at least in some of the states that I work in the building department, actually